Okay, welcome back to our last chapter. Chapter 30 of Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger. Eliza wanted to come in here. Eliza, tell everybody what happened to you this weekend. What'd you do?
I lost my tooth.
She lost another tooth. Give him a big smile. Look at that. And Mommy already read this to you. What did Mommy do in this chapter?
She cried.
I cried. You guys know how I get very emotional about good books. Chapter 30. The Little Stranger. Who do you think the little stranger is?
A baby.
Whose baby?
I don't know.
What was her name? That was her first teacher's name.
I forgot.
The teacher they loved.
It's Jules.
Mrs. Jules. Do you think it's Mrs. Jules' baby?
Yeah.
Let's see. Mrs. Jules came back with her baby. Wayside School was no fun anymore. Hey, out of my way, Buster, said Dee Dee as she pushed past Ron on her way to her seat. Keep your hairy paws to yourself, said Ron. Nobody had any friends. Everybody hated everybody except Miss Noggert. They all liked her. But then a miracle happened. Ah! A new kid came to school. The new kid couldn't talk. She had no teeth, and she was almost completely bald. But she was beautiful. Her name was Mavis Jules. She was only 4 days old. She really was a new kid. Mrs. Jules carried her into the classroom, and when the baby came through the door, all the hate flew right out the window. Louis came in behind them, carrying a bassinet, a diaper bag, an assortment of toys, and a baby bottle. It's Mrs. Jules and her baby, Todd exclaimed. Louis set the bassinet on Todd's desk. Mrs. Jules gently laid her baby down on it on a soft yellow blanket. Everyone crowded around the little stranger. Look at her tiny toes, Baby squealed. Aren't those the cutest things you've ever seen in your whole life? Check out her nose, said Myron. Oh, she's so beautiful, Mrs. Jules. Can I touch her? Said Joy. Sure, said Mrs. Jules. They took turns touching the baby. Goo, 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 said Mac as he gently shook Mavis's little hand. Iggle, wiggle, poo-poo, said Allison, tapping on her tiny nose. Iggle, wiggle, poo-poo-poo, said Rondi, tickling her foot. Yibble, bibble, said Todd. Ooga boo boo bear, cooed Joe. She's never going to learn how to talk with you guys around, said Mrs. Jules with a laugh. Dana was so happy she cried, and she hugged Mrs. Jules. They all took turns hugging Mrs. Jules. They missed her so much. Of course, there was one person who wasn't happy. Who's that?
Mrs. Noggert.
May I hold her, Mrs. Jules? Miss Noggert asked sweetly. Miss Jules looked at the substitute teacher. It's okay, said Allison. Miss Noggert's a really nice teacher. Oh, okay then. Sure, go ahead, said Mrs. Jules. I'm sorry for interrupting your class like this. Oh, that's quite all right, said Miss Noggert, picking up Mrs. Jules' baby. She's just adorable. The window by Cherie's desk was wide open. That's kind of dangerous, Miss Noggert realized. Somebody might accidentally drop something out of the window. She slowly moved toward the window as she swayed back and forth with the baby. I've heard so much about you, Mrs. Jules, she said. The children have missed you dearly. I've missed them too, said Mrs. Jules. There was a rubber band ball on the floor next to Cherie's desk. Cherie had been making it, although it wasn't nearly as big as the one Mr. Kid's sweater had been making. If I tripped over that rubber band ball, something awful might happen, thought Miss Noggert. She was just about to step on it, when suddenly she became very curious about the kind of thoughts babies had. She had never listened to a baby's brain before. Miss Noggert held Mavis close to her heart and listened. She gasped. Her face turned white, and her legs wobbled beneath her. As she tried to get her balance, she stepped on the rubber band ball and fell toward the open window. Louis jumped over Cherie's desk and grabbed her just in time. Mrs. Jules hurried over. Miss Noggert tenderly and shakily handed Mrs. Jules her baby back, and then she fainted into Louis's arms. It is impossible to describe in words exactly what Miss Noggert heard when she listened to Mavis's brain. because babies don't think in words. They don't know them yet. Miss Noggard had heard, what did she hear, Liza? Pure love. Pure love and trust and faith and no words to get in the way. It was a love so strong that it dissolved away all the bitterness that had been caked around her ugly heart. She opened her eyes. "Are you all right, Miss Noggard?" asked Stephen. All the children were very worried about her. Miss Noggard smiled at Louis, who was still holding her. "I'm fine," she said. Then she took a couple of steps to steady herself. "In fact, I think I'm better than I've been in a long time." She laughed and she hugged Stephen. "You should feel very proud of your class," she told Mrs. Jules. "They are bright, well-behaved, and just a pleasure to teach." "We are?" asked Mauricia. Miss Noggard fluffed Mauricia's hair. "Yes, you are." "Hello, Emma."
Hi.
Mauricia smiled up at her. "I know," said Mrs. Jules, "as I told my obstetrician." "Your what?" asked Joy. "My obstetrician," said Mrs. Jules. "That's the doctor who helped me have my baby. Then, once a baby is born, she gets a new doctor, and that doctor is called a pediatrician. That's different from a podiatrist, who is a doctor who takes care of people's feet. There are many different kinds of doctors. There's also what—" Todd raised his hand. "Mrs. Jules, you're starting to get a little boring," he said. Mrs. Jules made Todd write his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. "Hey, Louis," shouted Mac. "Ask Miss Noggard out on a date." Everyone looked at Louis. Miss Noggard looked at him too. "Do it, Louis," said Leslie. "I really would like to get to know you better, Miss Noggard," he said. "Ooh," said Paul and Leslie. "Way to go, Louis," cheered DJ. "Call me Wendy," said Wendy Noggard. "Ooh," said BB and Calvin. "Okay, Wendy," said Louis, "and you can call me Louis." "I already do," said Wendy, and she smiled at him. He smiled back. "So what do you say?" he asked. "Would you like to go out sometime?" Miss Noggard hesitated. "Say yes, Miss Noggard," urged Jenny. Miss Noggard took a deep breath. "I like you, Louis," she said, "but I think there is something you should know about me first." She bent over and parted the hair on top of her head. Everyone crowded around as they tried to get a good look. "It's an ear!" shouted Jason. "Yes, it's an ear," said Miss Noggard. "Cool," said Terrence. "Can I touch it?" asked Dana. Everyone took turns touching her ear. "So, Louis, are you sure you still want to go out with me?" she asked. Louis held her hands in his. "I like you a lot," he said, "and it doesn't matter how many ears you have." He paused for a second. "Well, how many ears do you have?" "Just the 3, she assured him. "I think your ears are beautiful," said Louis. "I think your nose and your eyebrows are beautiful too." Miss Noggard didn't have to read Louis's mind to know he was telling the truth. She could see it in his eyes. His eyes were like the moon. She kissed him, and his mustache tickled. And everybody oohed. Oohed. The end. I hope you enjoyed Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger.
Next on this, there's going to be a new book.
Next on the list is a new book for story time.
Ow!
Bye-bye. Happy
Yay!
learning.